Hello, thank you for clicking on the video. My name is Spider Sage, Gray Sage Khan, whatever you want to call me, I really don't care. I go by many monikers. I really wanted to talk about astrology today. It's not the only thing I want to talk about on this channel, but for my first video, this is something I really want to talk about because it's something I'm passionate about. I started studying astrology back in 2019, and I was studying religion and all that stuff. So I found astrology and learned how to apply it to my life. And I think if people gave it more time, because I think a big misconception is that it's just another belief system, when really it is mathematical. It is patterns. It's tracing patterns. So it is something that you can use and apply in your life, if you're open to it. I really think it could help a lot of people if they took the time to really delve into it. But there's some big misconceptions about astrology that make people think, they already know what astrology is. I just want to clear up some misconceptions about astrology, what it is, the biggest ones, at least in my eyes, that I see, and go over, the ways I use it when I'm talking to some clients, when I'm reading somebody's chart, how I use astrology, what I look for, the biggest planets to me, the most important. So let's get right into it. What I call the sun sign fallacy is this idea that basically you're only your sun sign. A lot of people go around and they only know their sun sign. They say, oh, I'm a Gemini because I was born in June. Or, oh, I'm a Sagittarius because I was born in December. That is the most basic way of looking at astrology. It does you a huge disservice, actually, to think of astrology as just, I'm a Sagittarius, when that's not how it works. There's about 8 other planets, asteroids, mathematical points, so like the North Node, South Node, Rahu and Ketu, and the Lilith. These are points. Some of these are not even celestial bodies, and they have energies that make you up, not affect you. They make you up. So your sun sign isn't the only sign that is you, per se. When it comes to the sun is, you have to think about it very literally at sometimes too. The sun is what feeds you. You go outside, the sun is what warms you. The sun is something that you like to be in. Most people like to be outside when the sun is out. Most people don't want to be outside when it's cold, when it's rainy, when there is no sun out. Most people don't want to be outside. So the sun represents what you like, what you want to become, what feeds you, the characteristics that you are trying to develop in this lifetime or in this life. It is, in a way, I've heard people compare it to like your soul, and I can say that maybe it feeds your soul. That's the way I look at the sun. It's something that you're trying to grow into, something that feeds you, something that really makes you happy to live, because that's what the sun is also. It's joy. Well, you go outside, you get that vitamin D, it makes you happier. Naturally, it just makes you happier. So that sun is what really gives you joy in this life. So if you're sun in Gemini, communication, short distance travel, knowledge, local knowledge, things like that, working with your hands, these are things that would make you happy. So that's how I look at the sun. What I would say is the most accurate representation of you, or what you will probably feel most comfortable saying is you, is your moon sign. And then I'm gonna touch on Vedic astrology later, but in the Vedic astrology, they believe that you are your moon sign, and the moon represents your internal world, your feelings, your emotions, your intuition, your relationship with your mother. So that's probably what you'll be most comfortable identifying as you. I don't believe any one planet really represents you, but that's what the Vedics believe. In the Vedic astrology, they believe the moon represents you, and in tropical astrology, they believe the sun represents you. I believe the whole chart is you, and that's another part of the sun sign fallacy. You are the whole chart. You have each and every 12 zodiac signs in your chart. You have each and every house. You might have more prominent energies in your life, and that's why they might pop up more in your life. But as a whole, you are all of these signs. So just looking at your sun is not enough, because there's even aspects, and that's how planets talk to each other. So if your sun is opposite your moon, there's a clear disconnect between your emotional side and your ego almost, what you want to become, what you want to be versus what you already are. There's a clear disconnect between that. They're not working together when that aspect of opposition is there. And opposition is just, they're 180 degrees apart. They're completely opposite. Or if you have a square, they're 90 degrees separated. That also brings trouble. That brings conflict with two planets. Or if it's a sextile, I believe that's 60 degrees apart. This brings a good energy. This brings a positive energy to, it works together. The planets would work together. Or if it's conjunct, it's not good or bad, but these planets are merged together. They're right on top of each other. And this is normally just a separation. I've seen many different ways people like to separate it, but the most common is 1 to 3 degrees or 1 to 5 degrees of separation would be a conjunction. So you really have to look at your whole chart, because just knowing your sun sign is not enough if you think, if you've already written off astrology just because, I don't resonate with Taurus. I'm not a Taurus. I don't feel these qualities. You might be right. You might be a sun sign Taurus, but you might have 6 other planets in Aquarius or something like that. So naturally, you would feel more Aquarian energy in your life, Or maybe your sun is in the 12th house, or maybe your sun is in the 8th house, which is a loss of identity. You pretty much give up yourself. You don't have a solid identity. Like me, I have my sun in the 12th house, and I've always been okay with not having a solid identity, I've never felt like I needed to attach myself to any type of personality or likes or dislikes. I've never built who I am based off the outside world, because my sun in the 12th house. But yeah, that just goes to say, like, there's a lot of different aspects that go into astrology. And just knowing your sun sign, the one sign, is not enough to just write it off completely. And I think that's what a lot of people do, and it's so sad because you can learn a lot about yourself through astrology. You have what they call personal planets, and that's Mars, Venus, Mercury. Mars, Venus, and Mercury. I might be missing one. The Sun and Moon. I'm sorry. I look like a fake astrologer now. But yeah, these personal planets really give you more depth, and it really shows you who you are in terms of love, in terms of aggression, in terms of how you work, in terms of your emotional state, in terms of what you're building towards, because you are not just one aspect, you are not just one thing, you are a combination of things, and astrology shows you that you are a combination of things. And that's what a lot of people need to understand. They're more complex, and I think especially in America, we get this idea that we are our job. We have to stick to one thing. You have to be one certain way, otherwise everybody's going to think you're fake, when that is not true. We are multiple things put together into one. And astrology helps us to remember that. Then you also have the generational planets, so Saturn and Jupiter. I practice Vedic astrology, so Saturn and Jupiter are enough for me, but there's also Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. I like working with Pluto. I do include that in because I think that is a very important planet. But when it comes to Uranus and Neptune, I only use it if the client really wants me to look into those planets for them. Otherwise, personally, I don't really use Uranus or Neptune, but I do like to look into Pluto. But these generational planets show how people from a certain time are dealing with certain things. Gen Z, for example. A lot of Gen Z have Saturn in Taurus. And what Saturn does is it constricts whatever sign and house that it's touching. So with Saturn in Taurus, Taurus is a planet of work, a planet of money, a planet of sensuality, love. Taurus are very earthy people. Common theme of restriction for our generation, for Gen Z and millennials too. I'm not just saying, it only applies to Gen Z, because these energies do intersect and they carry on from each other. But what you see in these times is that, Gen Z doesn't want to work. Gen Z can't afford X, Y, and Z. So you see how these generational planets even affect us on a global scale. Sun sign fallacy, you are not just one sign. If you think, if all you know about astrology is I'm a Taurus, I'm a Gemini, you're doing yourself a huge disfavor if you've already written it off. Please pull up your chart. I probably should have said this first, but for your chart, you'll need your birth time and birthplace. So the dates, time, and the place you were born, so you can get a full comprehensive chart. But yeah, the next is tropical versus sidereal. So this is for people who've pretty much already stepped into that astrology world. I talk to a lot of people who already know their birth chart, but then they start looking at the chart and they become even more confused, and now there's a bigger disconnect because there's so many symbols and signs, and what are houses, and what's Platycus, what's whole sign, what's Vedic. Why are there so many different avenues within astrology? If you're just trying to learn who you are, what your energy is as a being, looking into Vedic astrology would probably be the best bet for you, because Vedic astrology actually uses what's in the sky at the time you were born. That's the big difference between tropical and Vedic. Tropical astrology is based off of a calendar from thousands of years ago, but has become outdated because as we move through the universe, the stars' positions shift. The timing becomes different. So when it used to be Sagittarius time, is now Scorpio time. So a lot of people are Sagittarius sun signs, and they're walking around thinking they're Capricorns. A lot of people are walking around thinking, they're a Sagittarius sun sign, but really they're a Scorpio sun sign. So tropical astrology is actually behind by 23 degrees. If you are within the first 23 degrees of a certain sign, then more than likely you are not that sun sign, or that sign at all, whatever sign it is, Mars, Venus, whatever it is. If it's within those first 23, more than likely you're the next one down. And that's something big that I had to discover, and it really cleared up my life. It really made much more sense when I found out I was a Scorpio. When I read for other people and I show them their Vedic, that click is also there for them. They feel more, they resonate more with their Vedic placements than they do their tropical placements. It is not to say tropical is, outdated. Well, it is outdated, but it's not to say that it's unuseful, because I still use tropical for timing purposes when it comes to like progressions, and that's something that's I'm not going to touch in this video. But when it comes to progressions, when it comes to even sometimes transits, I'll use tropical astrology as well, because even though it's not as accurate, you can still find a lot of truth whether you're using tropical or Vedic astrology. But I think Vedic astrology really pinpoints who you are better. You can still use tropical and be fine, but I think Vedic just pinpoints it a little bit better because it's using the actual placements, the actual stars that were in the sky when you were born. Yeah, that's another thing what I talked about earlier with Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Those planets aren't recognized in Vedic astrology because they didn't know about those planets back then. So Jupiter and Saturn is the furthest they go. Saturn is the furthest they go. So you have every planet from the Sun, Moon, Mercury, all the way to Saturn with Vedic astrology. Now, the way I use astrology when I'm reading for somebody is they ask me a question, and I'll look at whatever topic that question entails, So if they ask me, I don't know what I want to do with my life, I don't know what I want to do for work, I can look at your Saturn placement, I can look at your 10th house placement, I can look at your North Node, I can look at your Sun. This will give me a comprehensive view of what you naturally want to do. Because a lot of people already know what they want to do, but sometimes society pushes them down and they're looking for something to appease and fit into society instead of fitting in and going with their energy. So it really helps to know your energy, and that's why astrology is so important. All right, I had to take a little breather, but I'm back. Now, the most important planets to me is the Moon, Saturn, North Node, and Lilith. Of course, all of them are important, but I believe in today's society, especially if you live in America, especially in the times that we live in, I think the Moon, which represents your emotional state, especially for men, is something that is pushed down and something that is viewed as you need to suppress, especially in the workplace. You're not allowed to be emotional. You're not allowed to I shouldn't say allowed to, but it's frowned upon when somebody's being emotional, like, oh, you're mad, oh, why are you crying, stuff like that. You're almost put down, you're talked down upon when you express yourself from an emotional place, especially as a man. So the moon is very important to help you get back in touch with yourself. Your moon will teach you how to heal yourself, whatever sign and house that it falls in. It will teach you how to build up your emotional state, how to build up your own emotional world, your own self. I use self very loosely, but I don't know how else to describe it. These words are very limiting. But when it comes to the North Node and South Node, Rahu and Ketu, these represent where your life is heading, what you're developing into, what you are already comfortable with, and what scares you. So your South Node represents what you're comfortable with, what you want to stick to, where you find comfort, and things you've already mastered. So wherever your South Node is, you're probably really good in these things, naturally gifted, but at the same time, it will put you in a rut if you just stay in here. There's no self-development in this area because you are already fully developed, But that's where the North Node comes in. So the North Node, and these are mathematical placements. These aren't real planets. These aren't real objects. These are mathematical points in the sky that even real astronomers use, So with the North Node or Rahu represents where your life is headed, where you're scared, where you are not fully developed, but you have a keen interest in. So that's where you need to move in this life. That's where you want to go in order to feel that fulfillment, to feel that purpose, that drive in life again. That's something you really need to look at, and it will really help you get in touch with the lessons you are here to learn. When you learn about your Rahu, when you learn about your North Node placement, a lot of things in your brain will start clicking like, yes, I do feel like that. I do feel like I need to step out of this boundary in a sense and express myself and free myself from my own limitations. Because sometimes it is really just a fear of getting out there and putting yourself, expressing yourself or putting yourself out there, that it's keeping you from this Rahu placement. So Rahu really shows you what you're here to develop, what you're here to learn how to do, where you're scared to go. The Lilith is, I forgot what the Lilith really is. I don't look into it as much, but I do see how it is very important for a lot of people. But Lilith represents what you're embarrassed of, your shadow aspects, things that that you like, things that in private you are very comfortable with, but publicly, locally, you have a hard time expressing. So even to family and friends, you have a hard time expressing. And it differs itself from the North Node in the fact that you already know these are things you are like. These are things that interest you. Whereas the North Node is, I don't know if I'll like it. I don't know if this will be successful. I don't know if this really resonates with me, but you need to head in that direction anyway. Lilith shows you what's already inside of you and something that you need to come to terms with inside of you in order to feel peace, in order to feel whole. This is your shadow aspect. These are things that society deems as unlovable, things unacceptable in human behavior. But really, everything is what it is. So repressing this sense of self, this part of yourself, will lead to more turmoil. And this is where astrology really helps you accept yourself, looking into your Lilith, being comfortable with it, learning how to express it in a positive way. And that's something I don't want to say positive, but that's something I'm going to get into more with the positive, negative, highest expression, lowest expression, because these energies do express themselves in very balanced ways, But Saturn as well. Saturn is a very important placement because it shows also the lessons you are here to learn. Saturn restricts, but it also teaches with time. As you work with your Saturn placement, you will gain more mastery over what sign and house it is in. Saturn is a very important planet, very important, and it is not taught about, I feel like, it's not taught about as much even within the astrology community. We really need to start expressing the importance of Saturn. When you start working with your Saturn, you will find that you're confronting a lot of insecurities. a lot of fears, because that's what Saturn also represents: fears, restrictions, limitations. So you're really going head first. When you start working with your Saturn, you're going head first into those conscious limitations, into those conscious self-doubts, and really working with them, areas of your life that you feel almost completely out of control with. And to give you an example, I have my Saturn in the 5th house of Aries. And what that really represents is a lack of self-control, a lack of taking drive, taking steps and actions. There's a dichotomy to each and every sign, each and every house. So when it's in with my Saturn in Aries, I have a tendency to not put myself out there. I have this lack of self-motivation, but at the same time, I also have a lack of self-control. So some things I will fully throw myself into to my own detriment. And other things I will hold myself back from out of fear, something that could give me more, But at the same time, with it being in the 5th house, this restricts how much fun I can have in life. And I shouldn't say restrict how much fun, because I do have a lot of fun, but mentally, I can't always just be in that fun setting. When I'm having fun is, okay, well, what's the purpose of having this fun for? Why am I doing this? And even then, fun things become competitive for me because of that Aries aspect of it. So fun things that should be just, cool for everybody, we're having a good time, I might actually take personally. Like, for example, me and my friends used to play Monopoly a lot. Me and my family would actually get into, I would take everything that happened in Monopoly to heart. I still remember certain things that people did to me in video games, because it really, that competitive nature, it really actually hurt me. Fun can't just be fun. That's what I'm talking about. It's hard to express these planets without actually seeing a chart and really delving into it for you. But once you go into your own chart and look at these planets and energies, it will make a lot more sense to you. But yeah, those are just some of the most important planets that I like to look at. Each and every planet is important. You need to look at and understand your whole chart. And in understanding your chart, you need to understand, again, the positive, negative, highest expression, lowest expression. Because each and every sign and house has a dichotomy to it, whether you want to believe it or not. That's why there's really no right way to be a Gemini, A lot of people say Gemini are two-faced, and that's because they're just one of the most dichotic signs out there. You can have a very reserved and nonchalant Gemini who has a lot of knowledge, but you can also have a very out there and expressive Gemini who's not as knowledgeable but very sociable, And these are two dichotomies, but they both have the energy of both within them. Each can be what the other can, but you have to look at the whole chart, because if you're, for example, let's stick with this Sun in Gemini, very communicative. This will make you want to be more communicative and sociable and get out there and work with your hands. But if you have your Mars opposite your Sun in Gemini, this is going to create a big problem for you, because now you might not want to work with your hands. Your sense of ego is conflicting with your sense of self-drive, and that's what Mars represents. So it might be harder for a Gemini with opposite Mars to be creative, to put themselves out there with their creativity, to really express their creativity. It might be a little bit harder for them. They might have to work on that. Whereas, a Gemini with Mars conjunct, a Gemini Sun with Mars conjunct, now these are one and the same, It is effortless for that person to express their Gemini in their full glory, They can really use their hands and express what their Gemini Sun means to them. Whatever house it falls in, But that's just one of the ways, this is represented. There's also dispositors and house rulership, which is so important once you start looking into astrology. And this is one of those intermediates. These are intermediate things now. We're talking about dispositors, house rulership. With dispositors, for instance, let's just stick with the Gemini Sun. If we have a Gemini Sun, but Gemini's ruled by Mercury, and let's say Mercury's not doing so well. Let's say Mercury is in, let's say it's in Aries. Let's say it's in Aries. Now you have a Gemini who is very aggressive with the way they communicate to people. They come off as very blunt, very rude, and these are why some people, whoa, that Gemini, what did he just say to me? Because sometimes that's the most impactful way to hit somebody, by words, not so much actions. Sometimes what somebody says to you can be killer. And that's why Geminis with, a lower expression of their depositor can be seen as abrasive, But once you understand this energy and you learn how to balance it out and learn how to dial it back a little bit, it can become a fully expressed energy, or learn when to use that energy. Learn how to use that energy, when to use that energy. Then that Gemini sun with its depositor Mercury in Aries it can fully be utilized, and it won't be a hindrance to the native, So that's one thing. House rulership is another. So if I have, for instance, with house rulership, let's say I have my Mercury in the 12th house. If I have my Mercury in the 12th house is ruled by Pisces. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter in Vedic astrology. So I look at where Jupiter is. If Jupiter is in the 9th house of Sagittarius, then I already know my Mercury is going to be pretty well off, because Jupiter is the ruler of the 12th house, and that Mercury is going to flourish because that sun, that ruler of that house is flourishing. But if I have my Mercury in the 12th house, but my Jupiter, let's say, is in Aries, I have my Mercury in the 12th house, Jupiter in Aries, 5th house. So it becomes a little bit harder for that Mercury to fully express itself. It becomes a little bit harder for that Mercury to understand its own intuition. Because that's when it becomes, your intellect becomes your intuition. But if Jupiter isn't doing so hot, now you have to really learn how to balance that. You really have to learn how to get into it. Balance yourself, especially with a Jupiter in Aries. This is control yourself type of energy. But that's another aspect. House rulership, dispositors, these are very, very specific things you need to look into intermediate-wise when you're getting into astrology. Now, as you go on, especially with Vedic astrology, you learn about nakshatras, and you learn about padas, and you learn about the evolution of the charts. So Navamsa, D9, that's a very important chart in Vedic astrology. These are advanced teachings of astrology. With nakshatras, we're talking about stars behind stars, because we're not just affected by the 12 big zodiac signs. We're affected by each and every energy that flows through this universe. So we need to know the stars that are behind the stars that are behind the stars, and that's what Vedic astrology does. It goes deep into the universe and shows you more constellations, more energies that are affecting you. Nakshatras, padas, these are things that are very, very integral to learn, and it will give you an even deeper sense of self. So if you believe that astrology really can't tell who you are, you can't say, oh, I don't know who you are just by looking at your chart. Yes, I can. A very practiced and knowledgeable astrologer can look at your chart and understand exactly who you are. In tropical astrology, there is an idea similar to the nakshatras and padas. I want to say deacons. I believe they're called deacons. I have to look into it more. I don't really study tropical too much anymore, but I believe with the deacons it's the same thing. Certain, if you're a Sagittarius, there's 3 different types of Sagittarius. You can be born during the beginning of the Sagittarius season, the middle of Sagittarius season, or the end of Sagittarius season, and this will affect the way you express it. And the nakshatras are kind of the same. As the constellation moves through the sky, there's other stars behind it that are affecting it as well, that are moving faster than the sign, the major constellation, Sagittarius, for example. So really, astrology is a deep subject, and the more you look into it, whether it's just for your own self-development, you don't have to go as far as nakshatras sometimes. You don't have to go as far as padas and house rulership. I think you should, but Sometimes you don't have to. Knowing your full charts is so important though, before you just rule it off. Now if you look at your full chart and you're like, you know what, this is all garbage still, that's fine, move on with your life. Not everybody here is meant to learn spirituality. Not everybody is here to learn how interconnected everything really is. Some people are really here just to be here and live their life and learn the lessons rooted in the earth. Some people are here though to really understand how connected everything is. And if you are one of those people, astrology is for you. If you are really interested in spirituality, religion, anything like that, learning the stories even behind the zodiacs will give you great insight into society in general. But for sure, astrology is something that you really want to learn if you don't already know enough about it. So give it a second chance. In my opinion, I think you should give it a second chance. If you didn't know about anything I talked about, give it a second chance. I'm not doing readings right now. I'm thinking about doing readings on an app called Spoon. It's a audio recording live thing. It's not really like live with the face, but it's live with just audio, and I really like doing that. I used to read a lot of charts, and that's why I can sit here and speak about this as passionately as I can. But yeah, thank you for watching. This was kind of ranty. This is my first video. I would really appreciate a like and subscribe if you like it. Astrology isn't the only thing I want to talk about, but if there's more questions about astrology, if you want to hear more of my perspective on this subject, I would love to teach more about astrology. But I also have a lot of other things I would like to talk about when it comes to consciousness, meditation, society in general, religion. I have a lot I would like to share with you that has helped me in my own personal path, just understanding life, understanding myself, and loving life again, So if that's something you're interested in, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much.